Zimbabwe, and welcome to our program, Transformation Markers, a program that seeks to bring to the core issues that affect Zimbabweans at large and to proffer the alternative. On this program, we invite people of repute where we talk about issues that are affecting you and to see if at all the MDC is the alternative that the people of Zimbabwe voted for. So we've invited Honorable Biti, the former finance minister and the MDC's vice chairperson. Welcome, Honorable Biti.
Good morning, Yvonne.
Thank you. We want to talk about the current state of the nation economically. Where are we?
Regrettably, we're nowhere. It's an absolute disaster. We're back to square zero. We're back to 2007, 2008, the meltdown years, and this doesn't have to be. This ought not to be. The current phase of the meltdown and breakdown has been brought entirely by the irresponsible announcement of the so-called new Minister of Finance, Mutuli Ngube. It's hard to believe that he's actually a professor of economics because his actions reflect a total lack of knowledge of the minute details, the fine details of economics. They reflect total knowledge of our law and they reflect total lack of sensitivity to the suffering of the ordinary Zimbabwean. You cannot, in this day and age, propose to tax Zimbabweans more when we are the highest taxed people on the African continent.
Let's talk about the taxing.
Yes.
Yeah, because there was that announcement of the 2 cents per dollar.
That's what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Yes. So the percentage of our revenue to GDP is 30%. In other words, our GDP, which is around $13 billion, and I'll come to this, 30% of it comes from us Zimbabweans contributing to that as tax. The average African country, it's 14%, 15%. The rest of the money comes from donors and investors. South Africa, which in my view is the biggest economy on the African continent, the percentage of their revenue to GDP is 27%. So we are already overtaxed. So to then impose this onerous fresh tax of 0.02% per dollar is just criminal. That those transaction costs are going to hurt the poor. Those transaction costs are going to hurt business people. So it's a very cruel, a very ill-thought decision by the so-called Minister of Finance. It's very amateurish.
I mean, they actually went on a drive encouraging people to use plastic money.
That's the second point which I want to make. They destroyed the cash system here in Zimbabwe. When I left the Ministry of Finance in 2013, I left a cash balance of US $6.5 billion. So you could go to an ATM and put your card and get as many dollars as you wanted because it was your money. So the US dollar system, the multiple currency system was working. But Chinamasa, the former Minister of Finance, raided the central bank. He started using the central bank as an overdraft. He created an overdraft facility there. He went and raided the central bank of over $2.4 billion. But you and I know that the central bank is broke. So the money which you was taking at the central bank does not belong to the central bank. It belongs to
the people.
The people who deposit money at Standard Chartered Bank, at Barclays Bank, at CBZ, at Nedbank, at First Mutual Bank. So Chinamasa stole the people's money via the medium of an overdraft facility kept at the central bank.
What was the money for?
For madness, for recurrent expenditure, for joints, going to the UN, for hiring private jets, for buying chefs, and of course for compensating people during the coup, for command agriculture. not for schools, not for roads, not for clinics, not for hospitals, not for dams, not for power stations. So once they created this omission that they stole our money and didn't have cash, they then put us in the position that whether we liked it or not, we had to use alternative methods of payment, which were principally three. The first one was the card, the debit card. Everyone now literally uses,
A debit
you
card.
know, the debit, you know, card. The second method of payment is, of course, the RTGS,
The transfers.
the transfers. But having put us in this position that we now in a cashless society because of their theft, they are now going to punish us in that space now by increasing this tax. How cruel can you be? How insensitive can you be? I said Mutuli is a professor of economics who doesn't know economics. And let me explain now. We are in a recession. A recession is a downward spiral of the economy. This economy has not been growing since Mr. Changirai left government in 2013. So in economic terms, when an economy has negative growth declines in two quarters, first quarter, second quarter, you are already in a recession. And because we've had successive quarters from 2013, we are in fact in an economic depression. And an economic recession or an economic depression is characterized by three things. The absence of aggregate demand. So unlike 2008, 2007, and of course I'm discounting what has happened in the last few days, our shops were full of goods, but we didn't have money to buy. So if I said to you, you don't have a penny. If you said to me, we don't have a penny. So there's no aggregate demand, which is the opposite of what happened in 2007, 2008, where we were all trillionaires and billionaires, but the money couldn't buy you anything. There was too much money chasing too few goods. So in 2007, 2008, we had a crisis of over-accumulation. The economy overheated. In 2014 to now, we have had a crisis of under-accumulation. We don't have money, but shops are full of goods. So that's the first characteristic, the absence of aggregate demand. The second characteristic is excess capacity. So there's excess capacity in the form of unemployment. 95% of our people are unemployed. That's excess labor capacity, which is sitting idle. There's excess capacity in the form of factory shelves that are there. In Bulawayo, they're using them as churches. In Harare, grass is growing there. It's excess capacity. That's typical a recession. Third crisis is there's no output. People are not producing. People become commodity brokers. They kia, they become dealers. Now, what do you do when you are in a recession? In our SMART document, we said we will construct ourselves out of this crisis. What is the idea of construction? It means that if we start building roads or bridges and so forth, we generate activity in the economy. So the construction company buys tar and raw materials from companies. People are employed, people have money, people go to the banks. Even a woman selling sadza at the builders, she is able to feed her children. So you basically spend your way out of a crisis. So in that circumstances, what a Minister of Finance does is that you encourage people to have money in their pocket. So you cut taxes so that people spend money. Because when you spend money, you generate aggregate demand. But you don't tax people. So we are supposed to be cutting taxes so that people spend money so that there's an upward swing in the economy. So Mutuli is doing the opposite of what is supposed to be done. He is supposed to cut taxes. He's supposed to let people spend money, but they're doing the opposite. And they've been doing the opposite. Remember, Statute Instrument 164, where they said we couldn't buy things there, we couldn't buy things, compressing demand. You don't need to compress demand, you need to encourage demand. That's why I question everything about him. He's a fraud, he's a fiction. I don't know what he is. He's a Mickey Mouse. He's is an handicap.
All right, Honorable Biti, I think we are being educated in the economics. I saw women fighting over a box of cooking oil, and I saw prices, spiking generally. Cooking oil that we used to buy for $3.50 is now going for $15 in some outlets.
It's ridiculous.
Yes, and you spoke about this back in 2016 when you talked about the bond knot coming through, the issue of inflation, the issue of shortages.
Yes.
We're seeing
black market,
the rise of black market and stuff like that.
Externalization.
How do we deal with this crisis? Should you be placed at the helm of government today? What is the NDC's alternative?
Yes, we produced a brilliant document called SMART document. In 2004, I was privileged to be the MDC Secretary for Economic Affairs. We produced a Restart. Restart was brilliant, but SMART is better than Restart. Yeah.
Okay.
So the first thing, there has to be short-term measures, and I need to say, Yvonne, that I'm in a way pleased, but also disappointed. The government has come up with a document called the Transitional Stabilization Plan. 2018 to 2020. If you read it, they just stole our SMART document. So we need to lay charges against Mutuli for plagiarizing.
Okay.
They just stole. But of course, when you steal, you can't always steal well, and you can't steal. But I want to come to what we would do. The first thing which we would do is to deal with the challenge of the manner in which the economy is being run. The cause of all these things is economic mismanagement. In particular, the cause of all these things is the budget deficit. They just spend money as if money grows on trees.
Yeah, being a consumptive, economy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And spending money, government's business is to spend money. But you spend money prudently. They've created a budget deficit, which is like 25% of GDP. Just to give you an example, just of last year. Last year, Chinamasa went to Parliament and asked for a budget of $3 billion. He got it. But outside the $3 billion, he went and spent another $3 billion to make total expenditure $6 billion. So what's the point of going to Parliament? When you are just going to do whatever you want Madira Georgina. It's ridiculous. So they've been spending money. Now domestic debt is now $10 billion. That's shocking, Yvonne. Because for the first time in the history of this country, in fact, I know of no other country, I'm going to do research, where domestic debt actually exceeds external sovereign debt. Your external sovereign debt must be high because you're borrowing to build bridges.
Yes.
You're borrowing to build roads. But you can't borrow locally just to consume on clothes, on perfume, it's crazy. It's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. In the olden days in Eastern Europe, they would shoot people who do this kind of things. I can't believe it. So we have to do what economists call fiscal consolidation.
Okay.
We have to balance the books. We have to spend that which we have. We have to eliminate deficit economics.
You were quite famous about that when you were the
They
minister.
thought I was joking.
Because you were saying we have to eat what
we kill.
Yeah.
Yvonne, if your husband hunts and he catches a rabbit, you eat a rabbit.
But I want a deer.
So you don't eat a deer, or in the case of Zimbabwe, you don't eat an elephant. When your husband is catching a rat, there's a problem. Which is why I said in Parliament that the greatest economists in the world are not the Alan Greenspans of this world. They are not the Tito Mbowenis of this world, great as he is. They are not the poor workers of this world. It's your mother, it's my mother, it's the gogo who is in Chendambuya, who is in Otito, who is in Kai, who is in Cholocho, because she knows that if I have $10 which I've sold a bucket of maize, I will spend $10. And in economics, 1 minus 2, it can't. If in economics you say 1 minus 2 is equal to minus 1, you've got a problem. Because you are now doing a deficit financing. So the first thing that the MDC would do is to pursue fiscal consolidation. We eat what we kill to return to cash budgeting. The second thing that we would do is to encourage production, supply side reform. Companies have to be started. Companies have to restock. Foreign direct investment has to come in. New mines have to be opened. New industries have to be opened. We have to produce and grow the economy at the rate of at least 10% per annum, which is why we in SMART we said, given the growing population, given the poverty level, given the development deficit, we are now behind all these African countries. We have to grow the economy urgently. That's why we spoke of $100 billion economy. Because there are three imperatives: a growing population. We are producing, today's graduation day, 300,000 graduates are being produced, but we are producing minus 45,000 jobs, annually. So it's ridiculous. We have to grow the economy. That's what we would do: grow an inclusive economy, $100 billion economy, which is possible in the next 10 years, as we said in SMART. The third thing, we have to deal with the fiscal, the monetary mess. We have to scrap the bond note. The bond note is an instrument of arbitrage. And the bond note has created all these distortions. The bond note has displaced the US dollar in the economy. The bond note is a quasi-fiscal instrument. Wherever you marry a donkey and a horse, it produces a mule. But a mule cannot breed. It's a distortion. It cannot breed. It's a distortion. It's a distortion. So the bond note has displaced good man. It's basic economics. So we have to demonetize the bond. Namhla, kachana.
Yeah,
the
because
bond note.
You had a time when we were getting, the real money.
Exactly.
That could actually buy me something.
Exactly.
Exactly. But right now, even if you've got $100, you can't do anything.
But you see, Zimbabweans are very clever. The market is very clever, which is why I always say, and we always say in the party, you can rig an election, but you can't rig the economy. In fact, let's be more precise. You can rig an economy, but you can't rig the fuel station. You can't rig the supermarkets. Now people are rejecting bond notes. Right now,
yeah, they're saying we want US dollar, but then the
US dollar because they know the distortion that have been caused by the. So we must scrap the bond note. Thirdly, we have to, if you decide to eat a dog, don't eat a puppy. Kana wafunga kudya imbwa idya gono. We have to join the Rand Monetary Union.
Okay.
For three reasons. The first one is that the US dollar overprices this economy. But the US dollar is the strongest currency. In the last 2 years, it has grown by 19%. So it's an expensive currency. So it makes this economy uncompetitive. It makes our exports so expensive. Of course, it makes our imports cheaper, but we want to export to get foreign currency.
Yes.
So, and it makes our economy so imbalanced, because remember, we are competing with Malawi, we're competing with Zambia, we're competing with South Africa, which uses a very weak currency called the rand. So we want to win. Why should a person trying to buy textiles buy in Zimbabwe using US dollars when he can buy using a kwacha, a metkashi, a Kenyan shilling, or a rand, which is at its low stage? The Kenyan shilling is like 1 to 6,000.
Okay. You
understand?
Yeah.
So we have to devalue our currency. But we can't devalue our currency by bringing back the Zim dollar, because we don't have yet the economy to support the Zim dollar.
Yeah.
So we do the next thing, which is joining the Rand Monetary Union. I like the Rand Monetary Union for one other thing. We are run by nationalists, or rather we are misrun by nationalists. So nationalists will complain, oh, we are losing sovereignty. We have to lose our sovereignty because we've been irresponsible. So let's join the Rand Monetary Union so that we lose our monetary policy independence completely. And one of the things that the Rand Monetary Union will do is that it will force discipline, because they're not just going to accept Zimbabwe. They will have to say to Zimbabwe, do we have fiscal convergence? Is your debt figures okay? Is the net present value of your debt to revenue okay? The net present value of your debt to exports? In other words, it will force discipline. One of the things that we have learned from the European Union, from basket cases like Greece, Italy, and so forth, is that it's not enough to have a monetary union where there's no fiscal convergence. Because someone can join, but someone is ill-disciplined. Yeah. What the Greeks were doing. The Greeks were like Zimbabweans. You spend, but you you don't know where the money coming from. Yeah. That's why they're in this deep war. So joining the Rand Monetary Union, the Common Monetary Union, will force discipline in Zimbabwe. So these are radical issues that have to be done. And these are radical issues that has to be done.
Honorable Biti, I've also noticed that when you read international news, you get to these projects that are done that cost $1.4 billion, $1.5 billion. But you come to Zimbabwe and there are projects that are done and you hear that $1 billion was spent and you can't even touch or see the end result as worthy of that money.
No, because there's corruption. There's massive corruption. I want to give you an example. Zimbabwe and Zambia carried using the same company, Senior Hydro. They in Kariba, it was Kariba South. They put in some new hydro generators. So Zambia did that on North Kariba. Same project, same company. In Zambia, it was around 100 million, 150 million. In Zimbabwe, it was 500 million. Same thing, same company, because of corruption. This it costs about $1 million per kilometer to dualize.
Okay.
So the road from Byte Bridge to Churundu should cost around $500 million US plus add-ons, $700 million.
At most.
At most. ZANU-PF is talking of $2 billion.
Okay.
So one of the endemic diseases, endemic cancers of Zimbabwe is corruption. We are on the Transparency International Anti-Corruption Index. We are only doing better than Nigeria and South Africa. And corruption breeds inequality. So you find that the countries that are most corrupt are also most unequal. If you go to Semlevi village now, you will see cars that you cannot give a name. I went to the official opening of Parliament. I saw the car that the president was driving. I have no name for it. I've never seen that car. There are more Mercedes-Benz per capita in Zimbabwe than in Germany itself.
Yeah.
So that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. So we have to deal with the cancer of corruption, the cancer of stealing, and implement some of the things that we have been saying in SMART. Number one, there must be asset declarations. Number two, the Income Tax Act must be amended to give the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority powers of conducting lifestyle audits. So we see you building a house on top of a mountain. When you are a civil servant who earns $400, the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority must go to that person and say, show us the audit trail. Where are you getting this? Where are you getting this money? That's how the Americans broke the mafia. They couldn't deal with the mafia in the 60s until they sent in the IRS, the Internal Revenue Services. And the IRS then followed the mafia and said, "You've built this mansion, Mr. Sisolo.
Where is the trial?
Where is the audit trial?" And they got them. So the mafia was not busted by the FBI. The mafia was busted by IRS. They have no explanation, and we need to do that in Zimbabwe.
Thank you so much. Let's come back to what Honorable Nelson Chamisa, the MDC president, always speaks about, and that is the issue of opening up dialogue in order to deal with the crisis of Zimbabwe, and that dialogue must be based on truth-telling who won this election. Now, how is the issue of legitimacy affecting the economy of this country?
Fantastic question. All these things we've been talking about, this economy, all these things, bond notes and so forth, they are a reflection of the crisis of legitimacy. Thomas Hobbes and other philosophers are very clear that no one can ever successfully govern without the consent of those that are to be governed. And that's the problem in this country. The governors do not have the consent of us that are to be governed. And that's why we say very crudely, you can rig an election, but you can't rig the economy. It's basically an expression that there has to be consent by the government. That means that there has to be dialogue. And I need to emphasize, as our president has been emphasizing, we are not interested in a government of national unity. We are interested in 5 key issues. Number 1, the crisis of legitimacy. Who won the 30th of July election? And akawina ngapiwe chinhu chake, akawina ngapiwe majikisi ake. Takatora serevhita yemwana bvatadya. Vanhu vakuchema ipai serevhita yemwana. And that's the crisis in Zimbabwe at the present moment. We have to resolve through dialogue the crisis of legitimacy. They can't govern this economy. I don't want to be a prophet of doom. They cannot govern this economy. I cannot see Mutuli being around for the next 6 months. If he's still around, it will be because he has totally joined ZANU-PF, totally succumbed to ZANU-PF. But he can't be around because you will see that these people maintain an exclusive, extractive, predatory infrastructure that serves power retention and loan, and not anything else.
We don't even have that culture of stepping down. I mean, I remember the governor saying, if Mangujka saying, if the bond note doesn't work, if the bond money doesn't work,
it doesn't happen.
Down.
Minister of Finance, Mr. Nene of South Africa, resigned. In Zimbabwe, it doesn't happen. South Africa now has a new Minister of Finance, Comrade Tito Mboweni. In Zimbabwe, it doesn't happen. So, not only should we discuss the issue of legitimacy, we need to discuss the issue of the reform agenda, starting with elections. Our elections in the past 40 years have been a cause of division, a cause of pain, and they've been contested. How do we make elections and stop elections from reproducing cyclical disasters? So we need to agree on a raft of measures to ensure that there is no quarrel and dispute around elections. On reform, how do we reform and deal with the twin evils of state capture and militarization? Our institutions are captured. There is no institution which is not captured in Zimbabwe. Whether it's the legislature, whether it's institutions are captured. How do we have strong independent institutions? In particular the judiciary. The judiciary is so important. So it must be totally free from interference by the ugly and dirty hands of the executive. How do we make parliament strong and independent? How do we make the Chapter 12 institutions in the Constitution totally independent? Your Human Rights Commission, your Anti-Corruption Commission,
your Zimbabwe Electoral Commission.
Your Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. You cannot have political commissars masquerading as chairpersons of your Human Rights Commission or things like that. I was very disturbed the other day when I saw the Human Rights Commission flighting an advert to congratulate Emerson Mnangagwa as the president of Zimbabwe. What are you sucking up to? What are you sucking up to? That's the scourge of our society. It wouldn't happen in South Africa. Can't do that because she's crossing the line. But here in Zimbabwe, there's incest between the executive and all these institutions. There's what political scientists call partocracy, the conflation between the state and the party. And that's not good enough. So we need reforms to deal with these independent institutions. We need the reform of the constitution. There's unfinished business around the constitution. We need to harmonize our laws with the constitution. We need to deal with the issue of media reforms. 38 years after independence, it's criminal that we still have one tired, exhausted broadcasting house. 38 years after independence, the state is still owning newspapers, which are yellow running tags of propaganda. This thing that you call the Herald, one of the worst newspapers you can ever come across anywhere in the world. We have traditional leaders. Many of them are not independent. Many of them think they're an extension of the ruling party. So we need to deal with the reform agenda. Third, we need dialogue around national healing and reconciliation. We need dialogue around nation building. We're a country, but we're not a nation. I admire West Africans. They've got national dresses. They love their national things, whether it's a football team and so forth.
And Zimbabwe doesn't seem to have that common
We do
vision.
not have. So we are just a motley, a concoction of misaligned forces, misaligned elements. And there is a broken down social contract. Yes, Yvonne, we can talk about our dislike of the government, our dislike of ZANU-PF, but the trouble is actually starting in the home. There's a war between husband and wife. There's a war between father and children. There's a rise in bohemianism, fathers raping daughters and so forth. It's a broken down society. There's turmoil in the church with pastors raping, members of their flock and so forth. Pastors stealing money and so forth. Our society is ill. Our society is sick. Our society needs redemption. So there's a need, and sorry to use this word, for moral rearmament, moral retooling. The church has to play a big role because the church is... so we need to deal with the agenda of national healing, national reconciliation, and reconstructing the social contract. Let's have a discussion on the modalities of doing that. And then we come to the economy.
And how do you, before you go to the economy, Honorable, around national healing, how do you deal with people who have been abused so much? Not so much physically, like the Gupra-Hundi era, the 2008 political violence, but people who are being violated in terms of their money.
It's very sad, Yvonne. We have been a society traumatized by decades of abuse. Remember that people lost billions of dollars during 2008. My own father, he won a claim for compensation against the state, some CIO overrunning. He won a claim of $4 billion. We were slow in using that money. But when hyperinflation came and the zeros were removed, the money was wiped out. Pensioners, they saved their money, it was stolen. $5 billion worth of pension money was gone. The monetary policy announced that with effect from the 15th of October, new FCAs are going to be opened. That means whatever we have in our accounts has now been devalued as well. We have lost that. So it's criminal. It's criminal. And I hope the legal profession can help our people by bringing in court applications to challenge the regime. It will take years to heal those people. What do you tell to a 70-year-old
who lost his pension?
I've got an elder in my church. I won't mention his name. He was a headmaster for over 35 years. Served his country with dedication and commitment. He's now depending because his children from the diaspora give him money. But you say, but I was a brilliant headmaster, and so forth. So there are many examples of cases like that. So healing, I think that it will take generations, it will take decades, but a good start is to allow those people to choose a government of their choice, a government that is accountable to them, and a government that will respect them and implement their program. This country requires love. The Bible speaks of hope, faith, and love. But the Bible says above all, the greatest is love. We are missing love. Other Bibles call that charity. We in the socialist movement, we call it solidarity. This country is missing solidarity. An injury to one is an injury to all. We are run by fascist, selfish, greedy people who are tired. What business is a man who is 80 years doing running the state? He has no business. Let the younger generation run this economy, run this country with the energy, the zeal, the enthusiasm, the buoyancy. So in a way, we are a cursed nation, but we have to keep on fighting. We have to keep on praying.
Indeed. Let's go to the economy as the 5 pillars that you said.
Yes. Yeah. The next is the economy. So the economy, a lot has to be done, which is very technical. So one of the things that we have to do is to deal with debt. And we propose to deal with the debt through the HIPIC program, the Highly Indebted Poor Country program. That program is very good because that program allows your debts to be cancelled and forgiven if you behave well, if you run the economy well. So you get rewarded. But you have to be a low-income country. You have to be poor. You have to be a low-income country. But lo and behold, what has Mutuli done? Mutuli, in his transitional stabilization program, he has woken up and switched off a switch and said, we are now suddenly a $25 billion economy. How do you do that? You have no research, you have no empirical study. Our GDP is $13 billion. He comes and doubles it up. Are you a madman? What are you smoking? Because so suddenly we are now a middle-income country. Our per capita income is now 1,500, 1,700. Tell that to a woman selling tomatoes.
Yeah, who can't afford to pay $30 school fees.
Per capita, who can't afford. 79% of the people in Zimbabwe are surviving on less than US $1.25 a day. So where are you getting the 1,700? So once you say we're a middle-income country with $25 billion, it means you don't qualify for HIPIC. And if you don't qualify for HIPIC, we have to borrow money. Where can we borrow $5 billion to pay the Paris Club of Lenders? That is why I said Mutuli is a disaster. Mutuli is a time bomb that is waiting to explode. In 1 week, he has done more damage to this economy than Chinamasa in 1 year. He's a complete disaster. So the issue of debt, we have to resolve it. Debt is a developmental issue, Yvonne. Because with our debt right now, we are not free to go and borrow cheap money in the international community. Number two, we are not eligible to get huge amount of cheap money that are at the World Bank, that are at the African Development Bank, because that puts a premium, a cost, a high risk to our economy, which is junk. We're junk status. We're a total write-off. I once went to China in 2012 and they said, Minister, we can't get you money because your rating to us is an E-. And I think with what Mutuli has done, we are now a Z-. We are terrible. I think there's something wrong with this Mutuli fellow. So the economy, we have to resolve the issue of debt. We have to restore the issue of supply side reforms. Most importantly, we have to sort the monetary mess. Most importantly, we have to grow the economy. All the things we stated and above all, we have to reconstruct this country. Spaghetti roads, spaghetti airports,
bullet trains.
Bullet trains. We have to do that. When we used to say this and when Advocate Chamisa said this, people were laughing. Zanu was laughing. But that's where we have to go. Yeah, there's a bullet train in Morocco right now.
Because we really have a serious transportation crisis.
Not just a transportation crisis. Zimbabwe is decayed. Zimbabwe is decayed. Zimbabwe, I drove Professor Anyang Nyong in February of 2018 to the funeral of our dear icon, Dr. Changirai. Yeah. And you know, he said, Tendai, your roads remind me of Kenya under Daniel Arap Moi.
Oh my God.
If you wake up, Yvonne, if you are like Jesus, if you resurrect a person, a Lazarus, who died in 1968 in Harare, you won't get lost, but there'll be no new building. You might get lost by Jameson Avenue, which is now Samora Machel, by Moffat Street, which is now Leopold Takawira, but nothing else will confuse you. There's been no gross capital formation in the last 40 years. Mugabe and ZANU-PF have been asleep. So we need to rebuild our country, have first-class, world-class infrastructure, roads, dams, and so. Other countries are commissioning driverless cars. We are using rickety old vehicles that were imported from Japan. in this day and age. Social agenda is part of the economy. 38 years after independence, we're still dealing with the cholera. I was listening on the radio, a doctor, fantastic young female doctor, talking about vaccination, that everyone needs to be vaccinated. Yes, that's a good short-term solution. The real solution is that we have to build clean cities with water that flows. Harare right now needs a new dam with over 2 million cubic liters of water. Without that, there will be cholera again. There will be cholera again. So we are in the past. ZANU has trapped us in the past. Your average black person in Zimbabwe right now is better off than he was. His grandfather was in 1951. So 38 years of independence, he's taken us back to 1951. Thanks to Emerson Mnangagwa, thanks to ZANU-PF. We need to clap your hand for them.
Thank you so much for joining us on Transformation Markers with me, Yvonne. I hope we connect again next week as we talk more about issues that are affecting our people and giving you the alternative. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Honorable Biti. God bless you.